Every carpenter should leave the world with something that welcomes life, not something that simply fills a house. He said it to his son, who had asked the question everyone was thinking. Who is the cradle for? And Ben Carter, 65 years old, answered it with the particular quiet of a man whose best answers had always been made of wood rather than words. Daniel stood in the workshop doorway and looked at his father's hands. At the cradle taking shape on the bench, white oak, sanded to the kind of smoothness that you understood before you touched it. He did not ask anything further. Some answers were complete. Ben had been a carpenter for 40 years in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He had built tables and beds and bookshelves and cabinets for the people of his county, and he had built them with the specific, unhurried care of someone who understood that the things people put in their homes become the architecture of their daily lives. That a table is where families eat, where homework is done, where arguments resolve and celebrations land, and that making one correctly was therefore not a small thing. His retirement date had been set for 3 weeks from now. The workshop had a calendar on the wall with the days circled in the faded marker his wife Margaret used for important dates. He had been a carpenter for 40 years, and he had decided, without particular drama, that his last piece would not be a commission. It would be the thing he had been meaning to make for decades without ever finding the right moment. The moment had found him. Margaret watched him work in the evenings from the house. She could see the workshop light from the kitchen window, the particular gold of it, warm in the November dark. And she knew the cadence of his work, from 4 decades of watching it, from kitchens and porches and upstairs windows. He told her the story the night he started the final sanding. He told it the way you tell something you have been carrying for a long time and have finally found the exact right moment for. Not as a confession, but as a completion. When their first child was coming, Daniel, 33 years ago, they had been so poor that they could not afford a cradle. Ben had been a carpenter. He had been, even then, a good one. And he had stood in his empty workshop with the knowledge that he had the skill to build the finest cradle anyone had ever seen, and he had not had the money to buy the wood. He had looked at his tools. He had looked at the empty bench. He had felt the specific, wordless shame of a man who can make something beautiful and cannot make the thing his family needs. He had made himself a promise that day. He had not said it aloud. He had made it in the way you make promises when you are 25 and poor, and your wife is expecting, and you understand for the first time exactly what you are for. If life is ever kind enough to bless me with enough work and enough skill, the last cradle I ever build will never be sold. It will belong to a baby whose parents can't afford one. He had not told Margaret until now. She looked at him across the kitchen table. 33 years, she said. I kept forgetting it was a promise, he said. And then I'd remember. And then the timing wasn't right. He paused. And then it was retirement, and I didn't have any more time to wait for the right timing. Margaret looked at the workshop light through the window. Who's it for? She said. I don't know yet, he said. I'm trusting that part. The first weeks of retirement were the hardest thing he had done in 40 years that did not involve his hands. The workshop was still there. The tools were still there. The bench was cleared and clean and quiet in a way that felt like a held breath. Daniel took him to a community housing project in the 3rd week. Volunteers repairing homes for struggling families. His son had been doing it for 2 years and had been waiting for the right moment to bring his father, which the retirement had made available. Ben went because having somewhere to go was the correct response to the quiet. It was there, 2 months after retirement, that he saw her. Her name was Abigail Morgan, 27 years old. She was in the corner of the small house the volunteers were repairing, her daughter in her arms, the two of them very still in the way of people who have learned to take up as little space as possible in rooms full of people offering things. Her husband had been killed in a construction accident 6 weeks earlier. The hospital, the funeral, the rent, the math of grief when grief arrives with bills attached. The baby was sleeping on folded blankets. Ben looked at the folded blankets. He did not say anything. He looked at them for a long time, with the expression of a man doing a calculation that had nothing to do with numbers. That evening he unlocked the workshop for the first time in 2 months. He spent 3 days on the cradle that was already finished. He sanded corners that were already smooth. He applied a final coat of polish that the wood did not technically need. He checked every joint with both hands. He was not making it more perfect. It was already perfect. He was saying goodbye to it, the way you say goodbye to the things you love, that have somewhere else to be. He delivered it to the community charity on a Thursday morning, before Abigail would be there. He set it inside, and turned to go, and the volunteer, a young woman named Petra who had been doing this work for 3 years, asked if she should tell Abigail who built it. He shook his head. Tell her someone believes every baby deserves their first sleep, surrounded by safety, dignity, and love. He drove home. He did not tell anyone except Margaret, because Margaret already knew everything, and had simply been waiting for him to confirm. He went back to the charity 3 weeks later. He did not plan to see Abigail. He went because the program needed volunteers, and his hands needed something to do. She was there. Her daughter was in the cradle in the corner, asleep with the specific, complete surrender of a newborn who has found the right place. Abigail was speaking to Petra. Her voice was low, but he was close enough to hear. I still don't know who built it, she said, but someone gave my daughter the most beautiful beginning I could never have given her myself. Ben looked at the baby in the white oak cradle he had built in November from a promise he had made in the year his son was born. The baby's hand was curled at the edge of the wood, the way small hands curl, as though even in sleep she was holding on to something. He smiled once. He turned and walked to the door. On the drive home, Margaret asked, without having been there, because she always knew, "Do you think your last cradle finally found the right home?" He looked out the window at the Lancaster afternoon, the winter fields, the bare trees, the particular gray and gold of a December sky that had decided to be beautiful anyway. Not the right home, he said. The right moment, and the right child. Margaret put her hand on his arm. He drove the rest of the way home in the quiet that belonged to people who have finished something they started a long time ago and have found it was worth the wait. Build the thing you promised. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the promise and trust the moment to find you. The finest thing you ever create will always be the one you built, for someone who needed it and never asked. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment.